My name is Blake, and with my wife Tishai, a year and a half ago, we established Def Can Coffee. We are a not-for-profit social enterprise aimed at engaging, equipping, and empowering deaf youth. So Def Can Coffee started by just taking our students on a field trip to meet Clark, who is a deaf coffee farmer from St. Elizabeth. And Clark, if you meet him, you'll never forget him because he's a character. And he is 78 years old, has grown and roasted coffee on a little farm in St. Elizabeth his whole life. As a family friend of my wife's who grew up around Clark, we decided, hey, let's take our kids to Clark's farm in St. Elizabeth, let them meet him, and just see if they wanted to learn more about coffee. Because at that time, we just wanted to expose our kids to a role model of somebody who's doing something as a deaf person. Well, the kids got so excited about coffee, they came back to Kingston and said, hey, can we roast coffee like Clark? We said, hey, we can try that. And so we got this little tabletop roaster that roasts a ½ pound of coffee at a time. We got some green coffee from Clark, and we started roasting. And pretty soon the boys say, well, can we taste this coffee too? We say, sure. So we got a Mr. Coffee machine that was collecting dust on the shelf, cleaned it up, and they started brewing coffee. And then people would come by and they'd say, hey, you want to taste our coffee? People would say, yeah. So they taste it and be like, wow, this is really good. And it's like, yeah, it's fresh roasted coffee. It's got to be good. And then people say, well, can we pay you for this cup of coffee? And we say, okay. And it just really organically grew because the boys were doing everything as a group. As they started selling coffee to customers, their smiles got a little bit bigger, they started getting pride, and they felt affirmed. They had positive attitudes about themselves. About a year ago in March, we decided actually to not just roast coffee, but to start a small coffee shop here at the school campus. After 3 months of running it here at the school, we said, this has potential to actually employ people. This has potential to go beyond just the walls of this campus. And so in July of last year, we actually registered Def Can Coffee as a business name and started the formal process of developing ourselves as a legal entity. The name Def Can Coffee, when I look back on it, I just have to say, God knew what we needed. We never really had a lot of discussion. We never did a whole lot of thinking about what the name was going to be. So we just talked to the boys group, the boys Bible study group that this all started from. We said, what do you guys want the world to know? What is your message that's going to be the core of your being moving forward? And they said, we want people to know that we can. And we just kind of wrote out on the board, Def Can Coffee. It wasn't until a few months later that we actually registered the name when we felt like, yeah, this is the right thing to move forward with. But it just kind of happened because the boys, that's the message that they want to share with the world, is that they can do anything. And so Def Can Coffee was the resulting name. When we started, we had no idea that we were going to have a business. It started as just like a kind of a project to get the kids a little bit more excited and to have more confidence. We started with just roasting coffee, and so we were bagging it and selling it. And then from there, we started doing espresso-based drinks and lattes, cappuccinos. And then some people said, well, you know, it's already hot here. Some people are going to want cold drinks. We said, yeah, absolutely. So the boys saved up their own money and bought a blender, started doing frappuccinos. And then somebody said, well, let's blend up some fruit. So they started doing fruit smoothies. And then somebody said, well, we want to do a milkshake. So they started making milkshakes. They're working now on kind of a roots drink using vegetables and fruits and blending those up to make a really healthy drink. This is nitro cold coffee. What we have is a keg, and inside of it is cold brew coffee. I think we're the only people in Jamaica that are doing nitro cold brew coffee, which is cold brew coffee put into a keg, pressurized with nitrogen, and then the nitrogen gas infuses with the coffee, and it's served on tap. So we compare it to Guinness and tell people we have Guinness coffee. Tastes like creamers in the coffee. It's delicious. This is entrepreneurial business education. And so grades 9, 10, 11 students came with their own recipe, and they bottled cold coffee and added vanilla flavoring to it. So it's an energy drink that's bottled, and you can just grab it and go. We do kind of anything coffee, whether it's hot or cold. Anybody could come here and get something they want. We've had multiple people who are coffee connoisseurs who have come in here and said that this is the best coffee they've ever had in Jamaica. We've also had people that come in here and say, coffee? I don't want to drink coffee. Coffee's gross, you know? And so we'll serve them something else and they'll find something that they like. So whether you're a coffee purist or whether you want something that's sweet or whether you want something that's just a fruit smoothie that's healthy, that is refreshing, helps you keep going, we have something for you. So really, I feel like we can match most demographics and most market segments. Our tagline that we operate by is engage, equip, empower. My wife, being a deaf Jamaican herself, has grown up where she has seen a lot of people try to help deaf people. And a lot of their approach to helping somebody is by giving them things. And then they would wait to see what the deaf person would do with it. And inevitably, nothing would happen. And the person would walk away saying, oh, the deaf person can't do it. So we started from a basic principle that our students have to be engaged and have to have ownership in it. And so we said, okay, we'll save up your money that you're earning from these coffee sales and buy better equipment. So they bought their first espresso machine, they bought their first grinder, and it continued to grow with their own participation. So that's engagement. Once they're engaged and have ownership and want it, but then they need the skills to be taught to them. So that's when we partnered with various coffee shops, and Sidecar Coffee from the US was our first critical partner, and they were willing to come down here and put on a 2-day intensive barista training workshop for our students, and 17 of our boys got certified as a level 1 barista. And from there, it just has continued to take off where as we need funding, they save up their own money. They have objectives and goals of what they want to save up for next. They save up, and then we go out and get it. When we built this training center, this was really because as we saw the growth that happened in the first 4 to 6 months of the small coffee shop, we said, there's so much opportunity here because the kids want to learn more. And so we reached out to Digicel Foundation here locally and said, we have this vision and this dream of having a cafe training center. And they came and did a site visit and loved what we were doing and came alongside of us. Digicel Foundation gave us a $3.5 million grant to build the space that we're in right now. We also received funding locally from Harvest Call Jamaica, which is the not-for-profit that my wife and I operate here in Jamaica that does things outside of just the deaf schools. We also work with children's homes and infirmaries and hospitals, but we also got $10,000 US grant from them to build this training center. But my wife does not want us to go looking around for a lot of donations and freebies because the kids need to have ownership of it. They need to feel involved in that it's part of their business. The business part of it, where we actually go mobile and have a business that caters to the public, is something that's really self-sustaining. We don't want to look for a lot of outside fundings for that because we want them to feel that it's theirs. We are making a profit. Again, because we've been operating within a school setting and students, and it's basically training for them, there's not wages or salaries. We're not paying full-time workers. So we don't have some of the overhead that a traditional business would have. Or as we grow and go out into the public, we will eventually have one day. We don't really have opening public hours. We don't want just random people coming off the street and coming here because we have children and we have to make sure that our children are taken care of and that they're protected. So we can't just have really strangers coming in. But we do have people that keep hearing about us and they show up at the gate. And if we're here, we'll gladly open up and serve them. But moving forward, we'd like to have a public space where then the general public can just go there to an offsite location. One of our goals at the very beginning was to create community, because that's really one of the things that our deaf youth lack in their life is community, that they really feel a sense of belonging to. So from the very beginning, we wanted to nurture that and make sure that we protected it and make sure that the boys that this started with, that it was theirs to run. But as it grew, deaf as adults started hearing about what we were doing. And so we started getting interest from outside people saying, hey, I've heard about Deaf Can Coffee, I'm deaf, can I get involved? And so we're not actively out there seeking people, they're coming to us, and through that we're able to kind of filter through the people that really want to learn and versus the people that are just kind of discontent with life and want something easy. Because one of the key principles that the boys understand is that you have to work hard. You know, business takes hard work, and you have to be committed to it, and you have to work together as a team. Through that, we've developed Carlisle and Fabian as a manager and assistant manager, where they're really the leaders moving forward, and they know who to contact if we need somebody else. We have deaf culture already in existence, which has its own set of norms and values, and we incorporate those fully into the business. And so things have to be visually friendly, things have to be spatial. In our training center here, everything's open. And so there's not a way, so we can have a group of kids that are in a circle or semicircle where everything is visual. Everyone can see everybody and they can communicate clearly. So everything we do is kind of in a semicircle and open. And that's a cultural value from deaf culture. But then within the business culture, we're creating very much an emphasis on interdependence. First, we're very dependent on others. As a child growing up, we're very dependent. As we get into being teen years, we want to be very independent. We don't want anybody to tell us to do anything. As you become an adult, you realize you have to be both. You have to be dependent and independent, and that's interdependence. Don't you just focus on an area that you're really good at and try to become the best. Try to raise up the level of your peers too. And so through that, they're working together. And that's really what we want to embody in our culture, is a body that it's all about the team. And if one person fails, then we all fail. The concept of entrepreneurialism is something that our students didn't have a real strong grasp of before we started this. But as they've grown their own business, they're starting to realize what being an entrepreneur is all about. Mostly it's about learning. And a lot of the things that they've learned the most is that you have to take risks. And you have to be calculated, you can't be foolish, but you have to try something. And so we are seeing more creative thoughts coming out of them in ways that we never really anticipated. We're seeing artistic sides of our students come out when they're thinking about marketing. They're saying, okay, how can we make this more visually appealing? And so we actually had students design by hand sketch a new logo for our cold coffee bottled energy drink. So one of our deaf students drew that, and then we sent it to Justin Forbes, who's a deaf graphic artist here in Kingston, and he developed the logo more fully for them that's digital that we print today. So in a lot of different ways, entrepreneurialism is starting to affect the way that they think, and starting to realize that inside of every one of us we have creative capabilities and ideas that just have to be tapped into. We believe that deaf can really go anywhere. And when you ask some of our boys, they're going to say, we're not just thinking about Jamaica, we're thinking about deaf can coffee being all over the world. And one of the reasons for that is because 90% of the coffee in the world is grown in third world and developing countries. In third world and developing countries, you're by default going to have less governmental program, less intervention, and lower education standards for deaf people. And so you can literally go into a coffee producing country where there's already going to be a disenfranchised, at-risk deaf community. And you can go in and you can get them engaged in that. And once it's a deaf person that's going in and training and teaching, deaf people by nature will just flock to it. And so the deaf community throughout the world does not share the same language, but they share the same cultural values. And so our guys could literally go to another country and walk around with a deaf can coffee sign anywhere where there's a deaf community, and people will come and want to know more. And you can engage people through that. And once they're engaged and want it, then you can equip them with the skills necessary to run it. And once you have a person engaged and equipped, that leads to empowerment. And so our boys have dreams and visions of being beyond just Jamaica. And that's something that I absolutely believe can happen. I think there are a few things that are critical for an entrepreneur. First, you have to believe in something. If you don't believe in it, there's no way that you're going to be able to convince and convey to your customer that it's worth their time or their resources to buy your product or service. And so it has to be something that you're passionate about. You also have to have a vision of where you want to go and allow that to guide your decision making. So here for us at Deaf Can Coffee, our vision is to have a deaf community and deaf youth who are empowered. And so every decision we make is, do we believe that this decision will lead to our youth becoming more empowered, or will this become a distraction? Besides kind of the theoretical vision things, you have to put in a lot of hard work. You have to be willing to make sacrifices. You have to be willing to take risks and learn. Every time you make a mistake, it's a phenomenal opportunity to learn something, and you'll never make that mistake again. Unless you don't want to view it as a learning experience, you want to be frustrated by a mistake, then you'll end up making that same mistake again. Success for us is not defined by what margin we're making, how profitable we are. We believe that if our students are getting the skills necessary and the self-esteem and confidence necessary to perform, that will all take care of itself. I think for my wife and I, our biggest fear is that somehow through a failure to guide this social enterprise properly, that we could actually end up convincing people that deaf can't. So what I mean by that is, and some of the experiences that we've learned from by making mistakes, say we have the opportunity to open up our own shop somewhere, and we say, all right, yes, let's do it, but we're not ready to do it. If we open up our own shop and have our own storefront and everything, but we're not actually to the point where we're mature enough as a business to handle that, and it fails, everybody that walked through those doors and saw it close are going to look at it and say, oh, deaf can't. And so we've been very careful about how we grow the business. We've used the analogy with the students of as a child grows, they grow from an infant to a toddler to an adult, and as an infant, you learn to crawl, and as a toddler you learn to walk, and as an adult you learn to run. So we use that analogy with them and say, hey, we're still crawling or we're still walking here, we're not quite ready to run. Because if we don't manage that properly and allow it to grow sustainably, people are gonna realize that deaf can't. And that's the antithesis of what we want people to believe. We want everything we do to affirm that deaf can. What motivates me is people like Clark, the man that started this, people like my wife, who are, through their lives, proving to people and demonstrating that that literally deaf can do anything, and that there are some ways that deaf can do things better. I get excited when somebody comes in here and says, wow, this is the best espresso I've had in Jamaica. And you see our guys, smile and stand up straight, and they're proud of themselves. That's what motivates me. Those moments where somebody comes in and says, wow, deaf can. And then the response of our guys that say, yeah, we know. And as that confidence within them grows, they're starting to believe in other things they can do outside of coffee. And they're getting more confidence, and their own creative talents are starting to bubble to the surface. And we've realized that as we go and share this message, some of our boys are phenomenal with crowds. They're great with an audience. An audience will be sitting out there, and they'll be telling them a story, and their expressions that comes through their facial expression and their body language just captivates people. And realize this person could be on stage. They could do anything. And those moments where the general public gets it, where they say, wow, deaf can, and those moments where our youth say, yeah, we know, that's what motivates me. I live for those moments where people just get it and they say, wow, I want some more of this. When you just can't go to sleep at night, when you're dead tired, you're completely spent, and you lay your head down, an idea pops up, and then your brain starts going again, and you just can't turn it off. So you're up at 2 a.m, typing something out, or emailing somebody with something you want to tell, and just those are the moments where you're like, wish I didn't have this thing on my mind. And then you say, well, if I didn't have that, would life be as exciting as it is? And so learn to embrace those moments of inspiration, and to realize that those moments where you wish you could just turn off your brain but it's still going are actually some of the greatest moments to really just focus, get the clutter out of your mind, and sit and just put things on paper, get them out and think about them. But I love the interaction that we have with different people that Deaf Can Coffee is attracting. Literally attracting people from all over. We've had people from all over the world that have heard about us and have come to see it. They might not be flying to Jamaica specifically for it, but they hear about it and they want to come see it while they're visiting. And then to have local Jamaicans that have come here and to realize, wow, the deaf community has a lot to offer. And so what we're hoping is that through this, other employers will come and see what the kids are doing. They'll see the commercials they're making. They'll see, the cakes they're baking and say, hey, I have a job for you. You can come work for me, because we're not really all about just trying to create this massive Deaf Can Coffee organization. I believe that because we are addressing a root issue in the lives of vulnerable people, that's God's heart. God's heart is for the vulnerable. He's for the oppressed. He's not about the people who think they have everything in life. And I think that as we have very carefully tried to address the true lack that's experienced in the lives of our kids, that God is blessing that, and He's growing it to allow us to fill up their cups so that our kids lack nothing anymore. They don't lack the confidence, they don't lack the skills necessary, they don't lack the opportunities in life to really grow themselves and use the gifts that He's given them. As we traveled around now, going through different places, the Digicel Foundation heard about us, and we showed proof to them that we could do it, that Deaf can. Digicel Foundation was so impressed by what they did, they gave us a grant to build a training center. And so now, as you saw over there, we have a new silver espresso machine that's really powerful. We're really happy for what we have. Our goal is to continue to grow our business. I think probably the most satisfying experience that I've had so far has actually had nothing to do with a cup of coffee. It's when I've seen my boys, our young men, stand in front of a group and professionally and powerfully explain the story of what's happened with Deaf Can Coffee. And when people in an audience, you see just a little bit of water get in their eyes and just a little bit of trickle down because they're so touched. Because our boys are developing the confidence that their natural gifting and talent is starting to bubble out to the surface, and people are seeing that. And there's nothing more satisfying than seeing somebody that really hears the message of Def Can and can believe it with all their heart. Some of my favorite things to do are to get out of Kingston and go to St. Elizabeth. Where my wife is from is an area called Top Hill, St. Elizabeth, and it's the most beautiful place on earth, in my opinion. And so we'd love to go out there, just hang out. Love to go down to Treasure Beach and swim and hang out, enjoy the country life. Being an entrepreneur is full of sacrifice. There are times where you sacrifice relationships, but you have to balance that, because if at the end of the day you have a successful business but fail in relationships, then the business has no merit at the end. So there's a balance there. You sacrifice a lot of time. You sacrifice financially. There are times where you have to contribute to help the business grow and to take care of something that is just kind of out of scope but needs to get done. You sacrifice with other things in life that you like to do, maybe hobbies that you had before. Sometimes you don't have as much. I think my dog suffers sometimes. I don't spend as much time with her as I'd like to. We have some exciting opportunities coming up. Nothing is set in stone yet, but we're very possibly going to be opening up a full-time cafe or a coffee shop inside of another cafe. It's not named yet. They haven't decided on their branding yet. It'll be on Hope Road, and it will be their own cafe where we would be the coffee service. So they would be doing food, bistro kind of stuff, and we would be providing the coffee service. So that's one opportunity. We've also had a couple other organizations that have reached out to us and said, hey, we'd be interested, in maybe you running a coffee shop inside of our business at some point down the road. But nothing is set in stone. So right now we're focused internally using our new training center that we have here, thanks to the Digicel Foundation and working with them. Also, JN Foundation has reached out to us. They have a social enterprise booster initiative called SEBI, which we're in the process of applying to become a part of it. And then they would really walk alongside of us and help us develop some of the internal mechanisms that we need to give us a foundation where the business can grow. Def Can Coffee encouraged a group of our students who are grades 9 and 11 to join Junior Achievement. It's boys and girls both together. And through that Junior Achievement program, they came up with a vanilla cold coffee energy drink that's in a bottle. And this is what it looks like. As we've grown, we've said, all right, we want to create a message about this, and so reach out to somebody that can help us. But then as much as possible, we bring that internally. So we create a message for the National Inclusive Education Conference that happened last November in Montego Bay, and we developed kind of a framework for the message, but then the students kind of decide what they wanted to portray through that poster. And that poster was all about comparing a negative view of deaf person that says deaf can't with a positive view of deaf person that says deaf can. And that was really powerful. We've used that one medium in a lot of different ways. As we go travel mobile, we'll put that poster up on the table and allow people to come by and read it, because just by the interaction they have with the baristas, they're not going to get the full depth of the story, but then the story's right there in print form where people can read it and understand what we're all about. But we've honestly in some ways tried to hold back on some marketing, because again, we're struggling with this balance of we're on the campus of a deaf school. We can't just have too many people coming in and ruining what we're trying to do with the kids, because that has to be the primary focus. But as we go mobile, as we go out into the public, we're working on developing different marketing tools. But our website is phenomenal, and it's developed by one of our deaf students. He's a graduate of our school. He's now studying computer science at Rochester Institute of Technology in New York, and he's a computer science major. So he developed our website for us, runs it from abroad. He's actually going to be coming back this summer to do an internship for us to develop some more online based tools. But we're all on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Everything is at Def Can Coffee. And so we're pretty streamlined as far as that. When people want to know how to contact us, it's Def Can Coffee. Just Google Def Can Coffee, and our email address is defcancoffee@gmail. Our website's defcancoffee.com, and then all our social media is there. So online has probably been our most successful mode of marketing as far as reaching out with our message to customers. And that was, probably a year ago when we realized this has viable potential business. That was one of our initial strategies, is go public, go to where the people are at instead of worrying about trying to attract people here. And then the second thing is partner with people. Any press is good press, and so we've had the opportunity to get several print media opportunities where they've written stories about us in the Gleaner and Observer. We've been on TVJ, we've been on several radio stations. We're now on Business Access TV, which we're really thankful and excited for this opportunity. If you're a young person or a person that has a desire to be an entrepreneur, you have an idea that you want to try, then I encourage you to go for it. But you have to understand a few things first. You have to be very committed to it, and you have to believe that what you want to do is going to make the world a better place. If you don't believe it makes the world a better place, at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to sell it to your customers and to whoever you want to reach. And you have to really believe in that. And if you don't believe in it, then you're going to run out of the energy, because there are times where you feel like, you know what, I want to give up. I don't want to do this. It's too hard. It's too impossible. And if you don't believe it makes the world a better place, then you're going to say it's not worth it. But if you look at some of the greatest businesses the world has ever known, it started with somebody that said, I believe my idea can make this world a better place. And when you start with that premise, if you believe that, then there should be nothing that stops you. And then my other encouragement is that as you go, don't try to do it alone. Reach out to people and partner with people that can help you. If you're selfish, if you try to keep it for yourself and say, no, I want to hang on to this, you're not going to allow your hands to open up to allow it to grow and to fly. And so you have to be willing to open up yourself to other people and say, hey, I want to work with you, and I want to see how we can work together. And then the third thing is that you have to get the right people around you. If you have somebody that is inside that is toxic, that's cancerous to your organization, no matter how talented they are, no matter how many gifts they have, if that person is not matching the team, if they're becoming more about themselves than the team, you have to be willing to stand up and say, hey, you know what? We can't have this part of our team. And so you have to be willing to sometimes do the tough work, and you have to be willing to say no. When opportunities come that aren't really suiting your business model or your vision, you have to be willing to say no. And as an entrepreneur, you'll have a hard time sometimes saying no, but you really have to be willing to stand firm and say no. And then the last thing I would say is have a business plan. And if you don't know what a business plan is and don't know how to write it, reach out, because there are lots of people that are willing to sit down and offer advice and help you work through some of those components that maybe you haven't thought of.